Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, the Crypto Hipster, Jamil Hassan, where I bring you founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, artists, musicians, you name it, all over the world in crypto and blockchain. And today and the summer season, I am bringing to you a new compilation episode. Last year, from seasons 1, 2, and 3, I brought you the Crypto Hipsters Chronicles. And now, from season 4 and 5, without further ado, I bring you the Crypto Hipsters Mysticals. And what that is, what it was last year, and what it is this year, it's a compilation. It's a compilation of 3 or 4 podcasts together as like a montage. And on a certain topic or area of interest in crypto and blockchain, pulling from my podcasts. And now, as we're heading into the summer of 2023, I bring to you the Crypto Hipsters Mysticals. And there's going to be 22 or 23 or 24 around their episodes. And I look forward to you looking forward to it. So thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for enjoying my podcasts. And this is going to be a summer treat for everybody. So please sit back, enjoy, and let me know your thoughts. This is episode 6 of the Crypto Hipsters Mysticals with your host, Jamil Hassan. Regulatory attacks on privacy and why government needs CBDCs. This compilation of podcast episodes is with 3 guests. First, Martinho Lucas Pires, who is the head of public and regulatory affairs at BlockReg Advisors in Lisbon, Portugal. Second is Vinicius Porazza Diaz, the head of growth marketing of Latin America at Lbank in Brazil. And third is Christopher Goes, who is the co-founder of ANOMA. Enjoy. It's interesting you mentioned ICO because I was an ICO advisor back in 2017, and somebody said to me, the U.S. market is the only market that matters. And that's no longer true. Mm-hmm. I believe that other markets like the EU are going to be very impactful. So what do you think will be the long-term effects of MiCA, including the challenges that lie ahead, and how does the EU navigate these challenges collectively? Because like you said, there's a disparity between the different countries.
Well, MiCA took some time to be approved, right? This was not an easy process. And I remember when the first proposal of MiCA was put forward on the table. I think we were around 2019, 2020, that everyone was saying, oh, but wait a minute, you guys are regulating ICOs. And ICOs was a 2017 thing. Now we have, NFTs. Now DeFi is starting to take place. And for example, NFTs are excluded from MiCA. DeFi is also not, well, a lot of people say that DeFi is not covered by MiCA. Others say that there might be some areas where DeFi is going to be impacted by MiCA. But the fact is that when MiCA was being approved last week, there were already discussions in Brussels about the MiCA 2. So a new set of regulatory measures that are going to cover specifically DeFi or decentralized finance and other developments. Also, there's a lot of, let's say, secondary legislation, let's call it like that. For example, the EU is now reforming rules on data management for business purposes. And there are rules there that people say are going to impact the smart contracts on blockchains and how you develop smart contracts for privacy reasons. You have, and also the AI regulation that is coming forward. You have rules on the digital operational resilience of financial institutions. So, and you also have uh, changes to EU financial rules to try to accommodate security tokens or tokenized securities, whatever they're going to have to call them in the end. So, Mike, I think, is a first step in the conversation. I don't think it's an ideal first step because legislators move slowly and the market doesn't wait for regulators, and so it's ever evolving. And so this was kind of a first step in trying to regulate the market, but there's still a lot to be done and still a lot of discussions to happen. And we don't know also how the market is going to play out. So now we're just coming off Ethereum becoming a proof of stake protocol. We're coming off, we don't know what are going to be the major DeFi players in a year or 2 years. We're still there. People are expecting through this kind of inflationary crisis to see how Bitcoin's price and adoption is going to grow or not. So there's a lot of uncertainty also in the market and how this, we don't see how AI still is going to be combined with blockchain or not. What are the major applications they are going to bring to the table? So we're still in this kind of cloud or in the metaverse. Remember the metaverse, everyone's talking about the metaverse. How is the metaverse going to come? So if you are a small state that can regulate, that want to regulate things, you have an advantage because you're small, so you can regulate things pretty quickly. If you're a big political, I'm going to call it polity in the way, but the EU is not a state, but to call it just an international organization, I don't think is also correct. You take more time to do this because it's so many different interests, right? It's a bit like when you look at Congress and the Senate and how the crypto bills and the discussions around crypto are evolving, right? They've listened to everyone since Facebook wanted to do Libra. Now they're also listening to Gensler. They like it, but when you see the action that they want to do or not, it's not clear. It's not clear how the US is moving. So, so I think Meek is maybe resuming is an interesting first step and a necessary first step, but it's a first step. A lot of things still are going to have to be fine-tuned, and I think we have to wait for the next 1 to 2 years to understand how that's going to play. A funny thing, and with this just finishing the answer, is that MiCA was approved last week, but it's only coming into force fully in 1.5 years. So when MiCA comes into force, really, member states are already trying to prepare themselves, and businesses in Europe are already preparing themselves for this. But in 2 years' time, I don't know how the market is going to be, and if MiCA is going to have any advantage, or if everyone is going to be just launching DAOs and decentralized and DeFis and going outside of the scope of MiCA. So let's wait and see how it's going to play. Interesting times.
Yeah. So you mentioned some of the, actually a few follow-ups. You mentioned some of the subsectors, right? The MiCA covers or doesn't cover. And what do you think are some of the areas they need to look at, like in some of these subsectors, like DeFi, like the metaverse, NFT, and gaming, which are the big four right now, and the shifting regulatory waters and the issues? What do you see as potentially coming down the pike they got to look at, or the challenges they're going to have looking at it?
I think that's a really interesting question. But I'm going to have to be speculative, but my hunch, and from what I see in Brussels and in the member states, I think the biggest thing they're going to try to deal with is DeFi, decentralized finance. So the provision of financial services or services that can be equivalent to financial activity through the issuance of tokens, liquidity, stakings, money makers, AMMs, etc., through computer programs, so through protocols and decentralized protocols. I think that is the way they're going to look, because one thing is MiCA is more, if we have to be honest, is more about, let's say, exchanges or companies issuing tokens per se, but it's not about really the decentralization and about centralized protocols and about how these protocols connect with one another, about algorithmic stable coins, for example. So it doesn't enter into that world, also because of the challenges in entering the world. Like, who are you going to regulate? Like, a lot of regulation is about liability of the market actors. Like, who is going to be liable? and also the model in which certain protocols work. Think about Ethereum, for example, where you have, let's say, this decentralized governance or this distributed governance where you have many different players, all of them financing developers all over the world to try to participate. So who is going to be liable? Is the whole system? Is everyone that holds Ethereum and therefore contributes to the governance of the protocol through its proof of stake? And there are challenges here. And I think the main challenge for European regulators is going to be how to handle the intersection between crypto and TradeFi, so traditional finance.
You mentioned a number earlier. You said 1.6 trillion, and I'm going to challenge that. I don't believe that. I believe it's 4. I believe the Brazilian GDP is 4 trillion, not 1.6 trillion, or like that ratio, like it's 2 times that, or 2.5 times that. And one of the things that I think that makes sense in Brazil, where it doesn't make sense in the U.S., where I am, is central bank digital currencies, right? Because you have such a huge black market, right? What role do you think central banks and central bank digital currencies will have in the future of crypto security protection, especially for Brazilians?
Yeah, that's I love this question, but I wonder if I can answer, right? Because it's very complex. I love the idea of, I'm studying a lot. I'm not a legal person. I'm not a compliance person, so I just like curious. So I'm following all the steps of the regulation here in the country. Today, what I can talk about that is most likely, who will lead the crypto regulation here in Brazil will be the central bank. Most likely, because we don't know yet. That will be decided early next year. So we have like until tomorrow to the president sign the bill. The deadline is tomorrow. So central bank probably will lead because they are super involved with the subject. The Chamber of the Deputies, they defend the idea that with the current law, with the current bill, users would be better protected, like from the company that act in bad faith, like from pyramids and fraudulence and so on. And probably they would ensure this by imposing like rules and sanctions for those who not to comply. Like basically, that's it. I think that in theory makes sense, right? In theory, when I said that, like super makes sense. But I think there's several points to discuss. After all, I think decentralization after that will be not so decentralized because once that we are involving like bureaucracies and numerous of bureaucracies in the process, in the regulatory process, and like the people of the government, they are trying to understand. They are not specialists, so they not fully understand the concept of this new economic proposal, right? So my restriction or my fear here is these sanctions and this rule can block the evolution. So of course there's good and bad things, but it's complex, and we are seeing in the discussions, especially in the Chamber of Deputies, that is very complex. There's a lot of points that was being removed for the original test because it was too generic. So yeah, I think that the next year will be key for that discussion.
All right. So something that was talked about recently in the Brazilian laws that you mentioned was a concept that I've been thinking about all week because I read an article last week, and it's this concept of asset segregation And then from my perspective, like I had money on Celsius that I lost, but then there's been like an infighting of between people who are Bitcoin or Ethereum maximalists and cryptos that I have, which are different than them, and everybody's at odds because they have different perspectives and different concepts and different goals and different everything, right? So how could clear asset segregation, by centralized finance exchanges serve, Brazil or any other country going forward, and why is it important in DeFi?
That's a segregation. It was that is the example that I give that was removed. I can explain a little bit more about this particular bill project, but for the first question, I believe in transparency, right? I think there is no one can change something of yours without explicit acceptance beforehand. There's the basic. I think that is from the moment the user understands the risks, like the scenario, and everything involved in a specific action or a product, the company has the right to use the available assets. Of course, under a clear policy, just constantly updating your and educating the user. That's why the education process of crypto is very important, because otherwise we are not we even know about what is asset segregation, right? So for me, offering liquidity, using third-party assets to ensure profitability, or even operational viability, for me it's crazy, it's madness, because just do that is crazy, but doing that without the consent of the user, it's totally crazy. It's a crime, right? It's a violation.
So, sticking with privacy, privacy to me, it seems like the regulators are attacking privacy, right? Why is privacy more important now than it has ever been before? And why are they attacking it, or so it seems they are?
Right. Well, I am not a regulator, so I don't know all of their intentions or motives. But I suspect that a lot of what's going on is simply that there's a lot of confusion in how these systems work and who is deploying them. This is frankly made worse by entities like Celsius, BlockFi, and FTX, which spend a lot of time schmoozing with regulators and having dinners and ingratiating themselves in the Washington, D.C. scene and talking up a storm about how they're the new decentralized financial sector or whatever, and then don't actually do that. And I think this makes the situation much worse, especially when they're hiring influencers to market with television ads. The specific question of privacy, I think, is probably there are a great mix of intentions and motives. I mean, the governments tend to like additional amounts of control over systems, sometimes nominally for the purpose of protection, sometimes perhaps just because they want to, advantage some specific party. There are many companies which benefit from privileged relationships with government. They probably don't want competition, like the banking sector, which is gigantic, unnecessarily benefits from close relationships with government. They probably don't want competition. So there may be influences in that direction. Certainly, for example, the Canadian and Brazilian governments have taken specific actions to suppress dissent within their countries that are in part enabled by their control over the financial system. Once given, that control is difficult to give up. The US government tried to ban cryptography unsuccessfully in the 1990s. before there were any cryptocurrencies, just in the days of PGP. I think because they realized that it was finally some communications which they might not be able to intercept and spy on, and that seemed scary. This is not a new battle. I think it's a pretty continuous one, but the stakes are higher now than they have been before, because the ability, let's go back to the year 1850. So in 1850, there was a little bit of like cryptography, but there were no computer systems, there were no fancy cryptographic financial systems, nothing like this. However, the cost of surveillance was pretty high. In order to surveil, people used cash. Cash is very private. And in order to surveil an individual's transactions, the government had to like hire somebody and send that person to their house or talk to people. The cost of surveilling individuals was non-trivial. But now we have all this dragnet surveillance. Data is just captured, it's gathered up by servers, by telecommunications providers, by kind of a small number of companies which have a strong monopoly over user data, and the government can easily sort of fetch data from. And that makes the cost of surveillance very, very low. So private technology doesn't, the government still has like police as long as we live in that equilibrium at least. So it doesn't prevent individual surveillance or doesn't prevent the kind of techniques to, it doesn't prevent the kind of power balance that previously existed. But what it does prevent is this sort of dragnet surveillance of everything, where large companies and the government can get whatever data they want without having to go through any kind of civil process and without having to pay any kind of cost for individual investigations. So I think there will be a sort of tussle over this because we have, as a society, been a little bit, it was just not clear what the impact of these large-scale digital systems would be. And early on, many of the operators of the systems were more ideologically driven and would have hesitated to give away data for free to the government or sell it to people. And over time, most of these systems have just become captured by kind of autonomous Wall Street profit maximization functions, and they don't care about any sort of individual protections anymore. They're just selling their data to the highest bidder. And unfortunately, we've become locked into this equilibrium, like into Google accounts, Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, and it's hard to shift out of it. It will require a bunch of collective action and alternative systems design and building and negotiation with the sort of people in the current structures of power. But I don't think it will, you cannot regulate out cryptography or information technology. It's like trying to regulate the laws of physics. It's out of the bounds of human systems. So eventually privacy will win out. It's just a question of trying to craft a kind of peaceful transition in my mind.